It all started on a quiet morning, the kind where the world feels like it's holding its breath. After my divorce, I thought I needed to disappear, just vanish from the noise of the city, from the memories that haunted every corner of my apartment. So, I rented a small cabin deep in the woods, far away from everyone and everything I knew. I wanted to be alone, to find some peace, to rebuild myself without distractions or interruptions. What I didn't expect was that being alone wouldn't last very long. Not at all. The cabin was everything I imagined, rustic, cozy, surrounded by towering trees and the kind of silence you don't get in a busy town. I arrived with nothing but a suitcase, some clothes, and a few books. No phone reception, no internet, just me and the wilderness. I thought the solitude would be healing. Instead, it felt like the past was creeping in through the cracks, and the silence was almost too loud. At first, I enjoyed the freedom. No one to answer to, no awkward conversations or forced smiles. Just the wind, the birds, and the occasional crack of branches underfoot. Nights were the hardest. Without the distractions of daily life, my mind would wander to memories I'd rather forget. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choice leaving everything behind. But then, strange things started happening. Little noises in the night, shadows flickering just beyond the window. I told myself it was just the forest, animals, the wind, nothing more. Yet, there was this feeling, like I was being watched, or maybe someone was waiting just out of sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't as alone as I thought. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky turned a deep orange, I saw a figure at the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a deer maybe. But then the figure moved closer, slow, deliberate steps that didn't belong to any animal. I froze. Heart pounding, I watched as the silhouette became clearer. It was a person. Someone who didn't belong there, or maybe someone who belonged too much. I didn't know whether to be scared or relieved. After months of isolation, seeing another human being felt both like a lifeline and a threat. Who was this person? Why were they here? Did they live in the forest, or were they just passing through? More importantly, did they know about me, about why I had come to this cabin? That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every noise outside felt louder, closer. I kept peeking through the curtains, trying to catch another glimpse. But the figure never came back. It was as if they vanished into the woods without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a deep unease. I started to wonder if this whole experience was more than just a simple retreat to heal after my divorce. What if this place had a history I didn't know about? What if I wasn't the only one looking for a fresh start here, or the only one trying to escape something? The peaceful cabin suddenly felt like a trap, and the woods that once promised solitude now whispered secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I'm going to tell you everything that happened next. The unexpected visits, the strange discoveries, and how I realized that sometimes, when you think you're alone, you might actually be closer to someone, or something, than you ever imagined. If you've ever thought about running away from your problems, or wondered what it's like to start over in complete isolation, this story is for you. Because what I learned in that cabin was far from the quiet healing I was hoping for. And the moment I realized I wasn't alone? That was just the beginning. I spent the first few days trying to settle into a routine, hoping to push the strange encounter out of my mind. The cabin felt like a refuge, but every creak of the wooden floor or rustle in the bushes kept me on edge. I started keeping the curtains drawn, watching the forest from behind the glass, searching for any sign of that figure. Nothing showed up. But the feeling that I was being watched never quite left me. Before I came here, my life was chaotic in ways I never expected. The divorce was rough, more painful than I thought it would be. There were arguments, long silences, and nights filled with doubts about who I was and what I wanted. I'd lost myself in the middle of it all, and the city only reminded me of what I had lost. That's why I needed to disappear. The cabin seemed perfect for that. Somewhere no one could find me, somewhere I could start fresh. But now, stuck in the middle of the woods, I I realized how isolated I truly was. No friends nearby, no familiar faces, no distractions. Just the sound of the wind and the dense trees surrounding me. I began to notice small details, footprints near the edge of the clearing, a recently used fire pit a few hundred yards from the cabin, and strange symbols carved into the bark of a few trees. They weren't signs I expected to see in the middle of nowhere. At night, the cabin's old wooden walls seemed to close in around me. I would lie awake, wondering if the figure was coming back or if there was someone else lurking in the shadows. I found myself double-checking the locks on the doors, even though I knew it probably wouldn't stop whoever it was. Sometimes, I thought I heard whispers carried by the wind, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just my imagination running wild. One afternoon, I decided to explore the area around the cabin more carefully. I followed a narrow trail through the trees, hoping to find some answers or maybe just distract myself. The deeper I went, the quieter it got, no birds, no insects, just the crunch of leaves under my feet. It felt unnatural, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. That's when I stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The windows were boarded up, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Something about it made me uneasy, but curiosity pulled me closer. I wanted to know if whoever I saw had anything to do with this place. As I stood there, staring at the empty shell, I found a piece of paper tucked under a loose floorboard by the entrance. It was faded and torn, but I could make out a few words, warnings, I thought, or maybe a message. The handwriting was shaky, almost desperate. It mentioned something about watching from the shadows and don't trust what you see. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my pocket, my heart pounding. When I got back to my cabin, I tried to make sense of what I had found. Was this abandoned cabin connected to the figure I saw? Was someone trying to warn me? I had so many questions, but no answers. Every mystery seemed to pull me deeper into something I wasn't ready for. Days passed, and the strange occurrences didn't stop. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, but when I looked, no one was there. I started leaving small notes on the cabin door, just in case whoever was out there wanted to communicate. I didn't know if they were real or just my imagination, but I needed to feel some connection, some sign that I wasn't completely alone in this strange place. The loneliness that I had once welcomed now felt suffocating. I wanted to leave, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the need to understand what was happening, or maybe it was fear of what I might find if I left, or fear of what might happen if I stayed. One night, the power flickered, the small generator I had brought with me cutting out for a moment, leaving the cabin in total darkness. I heard something then. Not footsteps, not whispers, but breathing. Slow, steady, just outside the window. I froze, too scared to move or even breathe myself. Whoever it was, they were close. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the breathing stopped. Silence fell again, heavy and thick, but I knew I wasn't alone. Not really. The cabin wasn't just a place to hide from my past, it was a place where something else was waiting, watching, maybe even following me. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know one thing for sure, I'm not alone here. And whatever is out there, it's not going away. After that night, everything changed. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over, and I realized I couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. The feeling of being watched wasn't just paranoia, it was real. But who, or what, was out there? I started to question everything about the cabin, the woods, and even myself. I found myself on edge every time I stepped outside. The peaceful retreat I thought I'd found felt more like a trap. I wanted to leave, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was that strange connection I felt to the place. It was as if the cabin was pulling me in deeper, demanding answers I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Then came the nights when I heard the faint tapping on the windows. It wasn't loud, just a soft, rhythmic sound like someone, or something, was trying to get my attention. I'd rush over, heart pounding, only to find empty branches swaying in the breeze. But I knew I wasn't imagining it. The tapping became a kind of message, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Around the same time, I started finding small, mysterious objects near the cabin door, a smooth stone, a dried flower, an old key rusted with age. Whoever left them was trying to communicate, but why? And why with such odd tokens? The more I found, the more questions I had. Was this a person trying to reach out? Or something else entirely? My mind kept drifting back to the abandoned cabin I had discovered earlier. That place seemed connected to everything, like it held a secret about this part of the woods, maybe even about me. I thought about going back, searching for more clues, but a deep unease stopped me every time. It was as if the forest itself was warning me not to dig too deep. At the same time, I couldn't shake the memories of my divorce, the broken promises, the quiet arguments, the sudden loneliness that hit me like a wave. It felt like I was running from not just a person, but from a life that had fallen apart. The isolation in the cabin brought those feelings back in waves. I wondered if the figure I'd seen, the noises I heard, were somehow tied to my own fears and regrets. Was my mind playing tricks on me? Or was something real trying to reach through the darkness? One afternoon, I decided to call my sister. We hadn't talked much since the divorce, but I needed someone, anyone. When I told her about the cabin and the strange things happening, she sounded worried but didn't dismiss me. She suggested I write down everything, every sound, every feeling, every strange sighting. Maybe, she said, putting it all on paper would help me make sense of it. That night, I started keeping a journal. As I wrote, the tension grew, but so did my determination. I wasn't going to run away anymore. If something was out there, watching me, waiting, I needed to face it. But I still didn't know if what I feared was human or something else lurking in the shadows. The forest around me seemed alive with secrets, and every day felt like stepping deeper into a mystery that wasn't mine alone. The cabin wasn't just a place to heal, it was a gateway to something far bigger and far more dangerous than I could have imagined. And somewhere, just beyond the trees, someone or something was still waiting. As the days passed, the strange events around the cabin grew more intense, and I could feel the tension tightening like a noose around my chest. The peaceful retreat I had dreamed of was turning into something I barely recognized, something dark and unpredictable. Every creak in the night, every whisper of the wind through the trees, made me jump. The woods no longer felt like a place of healing, they felt alive with a presence I couldn't explain. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the tapping at the window started again. This time, it was faster, more urgent. I hesitated before pulling back the curtain. Outside, in the fading light, I saw the figure, familiar but blurred by the shadows. My heart slammed against my ribs. Was it a person? Or something else? I wanted to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure didn't move closer. Instead, it simply watched. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished into the darkness. That night, sleep was impossible. I kept staring at the door, every sound amplified in the silence. The objects left by the door, the stone, the flower, the key, now felt like a puzzle I was desperate to solve but couldn't. What message were they trying to send? And why me? The journal I kept was filling up with questions I couldn't answer. I wrote about my fears, my memories of the divorce, and the haunting feeling that I was trapped between two worlds, the life I left behind and something unknown pulling me forward. Then, one night, the power cut out completely. Total darkness swallowed the cabin. I fumbled for my flashlight, but the batteries were dead. In the silence, I heard breathing again, slow, steady, close. This time, it wasn't outside the window. It was inside. My heart racing, I reached for the door handle, but before I could move, a shadow shifted just beyond the corner of the room. I held my breath. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, and I realized the moment of truth was coming. Whatever had followed me here was no longer waiting in the shadows. It was right here, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I froze, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. The shadow didn't move, but the air felt thick, like the cabin itself was holding its breath. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the shadow shifted away from the corner, and I caught a glimpse of a face. Not a stranger's face, but someone I never expected to see here. It was my ex. How was that possible? I had left everything behind to escape this part of my life, yet here he was, standing in the dark cabin as if he had never left. My mind raced. Had he been the figure watching me all along? Had he followed me into the woods? Or was this some cruel trick my mind had played in the shadows? He didn't say a word. His eyes, cold and unreadable, fixed on me like he was trying to understand why I was here. The tension between us was thicker than the night around us. I wanted to scream, to ask him why, but all I could do was stare, unable to move or speak. Then, as if sensing my fear, he turned toward the window and looked out into the woods. "You're not alone," he said quietly, almost as if warning me. "There's more here than you realize." Before I could ask what he meant, a sudden noise outside snapped my attention back. The woods were alive again, branches snapping, leaves rustling faster than before. The tapping on the window started once more, frantic and demanding. But this time, it wasn't just one sound. There were others, footsteps, whispers, even laughter that didn't belong to any person I knew. I realized then that the cabin wasn't just a place haunted by memories or by one figure in the shadows. It was a crossroads, a place where my past and something darker collided. And with my ex suddenly back in the picture, whatever was watching me now had even more reason to come closer. The quiet retreat I sought had turned into a nightmare where every secret I tried to bury was clawing its way back to the surface. I didn't know who or what I was really dealing with anymore, but one thing was certain: I couldn't run. Not now. Not ever. My ex's words echoed in my mind as the chaos outside grew louder. The cabin shook with every snap of a branch and every distant, eerie laugh. I realized then that the figure in the woods wasn't just a stranger. It was tied to both my past and this place in ways I hadn't understood until now. I had to face it, or I'd never find peace. With trembling hands, I grabbed the old key I'd found earlier and stepped outside, determined to confront whatever was waiting for me. The forest was dark, shadows moving like living things all around me. Then, in the distance, I saw the abandoned cabin again, its doors slightly open, as if inviting me in. Inside, the air was thick with silence and something unspoken. I pushed the door fully open and was met with the figure standing in the center. But this time, it wasn't threatening, it was a reflection of me. The person I had been before the divorce, before the silence and fear, the person I had lost somewhere along the way. It was like the cabin, the woods, even the strange presence were forcing me to face my own pain, my own regrets. The whispers, the tapping, the shadows, they were all echoes of my fears, twisted and magnified by the loneliness I'd embraced. Suddenly, my ex appeared beside me again, but his expression had softened. "You needed to see this," he said. "Not to scare you, but to help you find yourself." As I stood there, heart pounding, the forest around us began to calm. The darkness lifted, replaced by a quiet peace I hadn't felt in months. But just as I thought it was over, a voice whispered right behind me, familiar yet chilling. "You're never truly alone here." I spun around. The cabin was empty. Or was it? I stood frozen, the cold air prickling my skin as the whisper faded into silence. The cabin around me felt different now, quieter, somehow softer. I realized that the voice wasn't something to fear, but a reminder. A reminder that healing isn't about erasing the past or running away from pain. It's about facing it, even when it feels impossible. My ex looked at me one last time before stepping back into the shadows of the forest. He didn't say goodbye, but somehow it felt like a release, a closing of a chapter one thought would never end. The strange occurrences, the tapping, the mysterious tokens, the figure in the woods, they were all part of my journey. The cabin wasn't haunted by ghosts or strangers, but by the memories and emotions I had tried so hard to ignore. As dawn broke, the sunlight poured through the trees, filling the cabin with warmth. I breathed deeply, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew I wasn't perfect, and the past wouldn't disappear overnight, but I was ready to move forward. This time, when I looked out into the woods, I saw not shadows but hope. The cabin had been more than a refuge, it was a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I needed to confront to truly be free. Sometimes, the hardest journeys are the ones we take alone, but even in solitude, we're never truly alone. And maybe that's the most important thing I learned from my time here. With a final glance at the cabin, I stepped outside, ready for whatever came next. 3.